Most retirement content online focuses on one small piece at a time: investments, Social Security, taxes, and so on. While each of these matters, it can leave you feeling like you're trying to assemble a puzzle without ever seeing the full picture. If you've ever felt overwhelmed or wondered, how do I know if I've covered everything? You are not alone. To help solve that problem, I'm going to walk you through a framework for thinking about retirement, not in detail for each piece, but in a way that helps you see how everything fits together so you can feel confident that you're not missing something. A comprehensive plan isn't something that you do once and forget. It's something that you revisit over time. I recommend coming back to each of these areas at least once a year to make sure your plan still fits your life. Hi, I'm Melody, and I retired after a career in tech. And like many people, I found that retirement brings a lot of questions that aren't always easy to answer. I leveraged the skills that I developed over the course of my career, and I created this framework because I wanted a structured way to think through everything without feeling overwhelmed. And now I'm sharing it with you. Your lifestyle is where everything starts. Before we talk about money, or before we talk about investments or spreadsheets or strategies, we need to talk about your life. Money in retirement is only there to support something. And if we don't get clear on what it's supporting, it's very hard to know if we're on the right track. So let's slow down for a minute and just ask a simple question. What do you actually want your retirement to look like? Not what someone on YouTube said it should be, or your neighbors or your friends, but what feels right to you. Do you want to retire early? And if you do, what are you willing to trade for that? Because there's always a balance here. Retiring earlier might mean a longer retirement, but it might also mean tighter spending. There's no single right answer, but there is a right answer for you. And then think about how you want to spend your days. What does a good day in retirement actually look like? Are you traveling and exploring new places, spending time with friends and family, volunteering, learning new things, starting a small business, or working part-time because you enjoy it? Or maybe you're happiest at home, a quiet morning, a cup of coffee, reading, maybe some time in the garden or working on a hobby. Retirement doesn't have to be one thing. It's really more like a tapestry made up of all the things you enjoy, along with the simple, everyday business of living. Now, another important piece of this is understanding that retirement isn't one long, unchanging phase. Most people move through different stages. You'll often hear them described as the go-go years, when you're active and doing more; the slow-go years, when things begin to slow down; and eventually the no-go years, when your energy or mobility is more limited. And each of these phases can look very different. Next, let's talk about housing, because this is a big one. Housing is not just a financial decision, it's a deeply personal one. It shapes your daily life in a very real way. You might ask yourself, will you stay where you are or move? And if you move, do you want to be in a city with everything close by, in the suburbs with a bit more space, or somewhere more rural and quiet? Do you want a house, a condo, or something else? Do you want to own your home, or would you prefer the flexibility of renting? Do you want to be close to family, or do you want to follow the weather? Maybe you want to become a snowbird and spend part of the year in one place and part in another. There are a lot of possibilities here, and that can feel overwhelming if you try to find the perfect answer. So here's something that I found helpful. You don't need one perfect plan. Instead, think in terms of a range of options that would all be acceptable. Maybe you could stay where you are, or maybe you could downsize. Maybe you could move closer to family. If more than one of these feels good enough, that gives you flexibility. And that's really the key idea for this whole part of the plan. Your life plan doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be intentional. Because this is the piece that informs everything else. Once you have a sense of the life you want, the next question becomes, can it actually work financially? And this is where we move from ideas and preferences and into something more concrete. This is your financial foundation. At the center of it is your long-term retirement model. Now, this is not just a quick calculation or a rule of thumb. We've all heard of the 4% rule, and it gives you a general idea of a very conservative place to start. But it's really not enough. Especially if you're retiring earlier, you want flexibility in your spending, or you want to make the most of the assets that you work so hard to build. Because retirement isn't static. Your spending changes month to month. Markets change, lifestyle changes. So instead of relying on a single rule, I strongly recommend that you have a customized model of your retirement finances. This is typically created using financial planning software. You can absolutely do this yourself. There are some very good tools out there. Or you can work with a financial advisor to build it together. Either way, the goal is the same: to create a plan that looks across your full retirement and asks, how might your spending change over time? How might your investments perform under different conditions? And how likely is it that your money will last? This kind of model, which typically uses Monte Carlo simulations, gives you a much more realistic picture than a simple rule ever could. And just as importantly, it gives you something you can adjust over time. It allows you to consider one-time expenses instead of a simple spend X dollars every month, adjust for inflation, and nothing more. These are the things that don't show up in your monthly budget but can have a big impact over time. Things like replacing a car, home remodeling, a once-in-a-lifetime trip, even helping family with education, weddings, or a home purchase. These are very real parts of life. And if they're not included in your plan, they can throw things off. So it's important to think ahead and build them in, even if it's just a rough estimate. Now, alongside your financial long-term model, you also have your budget. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. The model tells you what should work. The budget shows you what's actually happening day to day. This is how you live your plan. It's where you check in and ask, am I spending in a way that supports the life I said I wanted? Am I staying within the general plan the general path that my plan assumes? And this doesn't have to be rigid or restrictive. It's not about perfection. It's about awareness. Because when you combine a thoughtful life plan, a realistic long-term model, and a monthly budget, you end up with something really powerful. A plan that's both intentional and grounded in reality. And once that foundation is in place, then you can start building the systems that coordinate with it, such as your income, your investments, and your tax strategy. Now we move into the parts of your plan that help manage your money. First is your income plan. How do you create your retirement paycheck? This might include Social Security, pensions, part-time work, and withdrawals from your investments. You also get to decide how stable or flexible you want that income to be. This is where you consider a guardrail strategy. Next is your investment strategy. What level of risk are you comfortable with? Do you prefer an allocation like 60-40 or a bucket approach where money is segmented for different time frames? And finally, taxes. Both what you pay this year and what you might pay over the long term. This is where you consider if Roth conversions might be right for you. Next is risk management, and this is the part of your plan that protects everything else. You can have a thoughtful life plan, a solid financial model, and a well-designed income strategy. But if something goes wrong, and it will at some point, this is the part that helps you stay on track. So when we talk about risk management, we're really asking, what could go wrong? And how prepared am I to handle it? Now, there are several pieces to this, but I want to spend a little extra time on one in particular, healthcare, because it's both essential and often misunderstood, especially if you're retiring before age 65. Before Medicare, many people will use the ACA, the Affordable Health Care Act Marketplace, for health insurance. And this is where things get really interesting because healthcare and early retirement isn't just about choosing a plan. It's also about managing your income. Through the ACA, many early retirees qualify for subsidies, which can significantly reduce the cost of insurance. And those subsidies are based on your taxable income. To give you an idea of how powerful this can be, when I first retired, I was able to create an income from different asset types and keep my taxable income low enough to qualify for a substantial subsidy. My monthly premium was less than $250 per month. Beyond healthcare, risk management also includes more traditional forms of insurance, things like homeowners insurance, auto insurance, umbrella insurance, and depending on your situation, possibly long-term care insurance. These are the protections that help safeguard your assets. And then there's the broader category of what-if scenarios. You don't need to predict every possible outcome, but it's helpful to think through a few key ones. What if the market drops significantly early in your retirement? What if you have a major health issue? What if a family member needs financial support? And just as important, what would I do if that happened? Would you reduce spending for a period of time? Delay a large purchase? Adjust your withdrawals? Or even go back to work part-time or downsize your home? Having even a rough plan for how you would respond can take a lot of the stress out of those situations if they arise. And that's really the goal here. Not to eliminate risk, that's just not possible, but to make sure that when life happens, your plan is resilient enough to handle it. Finally, we come to legacy and end-of-life planning, which is the last piece of the framework. Do you want to leave a legacy for your family or to organizations you care about? Or do you want to spend as much as you can? You should also make sure your legal and financial documents are in order. And also think about how you want to live later in life if your abilities change. How can you maintain your quality of life? If you have a partner, what happens to the other person when one of you passes? These aren't always easy topics, but they are important. You don't need to have every detail figured out before you retire, but having the major pieces in place and having a sense of how they fit together can give you something really valuable, a sense of clarity and peace of mind. Because instead of wondering, am I missing something? You can feel more confident that you've thought through the key points. That's what this framework is for. It's simply a way to step back, see the full picture, and feel a little more confident that you're covering the essentials. And then over time, you can come back to it. You can adjust, refine, and change things as your life changes. Keep in mind that retirement isn't something you figure out once and then you're done. And this just gives you a structured place to return to along the way. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you found this helpful. I'll see you in the next video.